Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Donovan Haines. I'm a class of 1993 in the college. I'm thrilled to kick off the Volunteer Caucus first session this morning. A big thank you to the attendees, steering committee especially for all your hard work, and the staff for putting this together. We're thrilled that you could attend today, so thank you. As a university leader in a community of 7,800 volunteers, in an overall alumni community of leaders of 157,000 people, we wanted to thank you for taking the time to come and get connected with other volunteers and hear what's going on within the university. Together with our staff partners, we have made great strides in achieving the transformational goal of 50+1, which we'll get to here in a second. But alumni engagement of all forms, going to events, giving one's time, or participating in philanthropy, or helping mentor a student or engage with our high school potential applicants. The ABG fosters a shared sense of community by representing, engaging, and celebrating the university's worldwide community. So please use this as a resource, and if I can just have the ABG members in the audience, if you just mind raising your hand, just so people can identify you. Thank you very much. So on behalf of the board, thank you so much for coming. We're going to plan to leave time for questions at the end here and still get you out on time so you can attend the next session, which starts at 9:30. For those of you, we are streaming this live. For those of you who would like to submit questions, please use the Twitter hashtag UChicago for Volunteer Caucus. So in 2008, the Joint Task Force report, which we'll refer to often, the Joint Task Force report came out. This was a compilation of 3 trustees, 3 alumni board members, led by John McGinn, who was the previous alumni board president, really got together and talked about how do we do a comprehensive evaluation of where our alumni community is today. The last time we really looked at this was in the late 60s, and obviously it's grown and changed quite a bit. So to that end, we wanted to talk about the compact between alumni and the institution. It's not just a one-sided, you came here, you got your degree, here's your piece of paper, and now all of a sudden the onus is on you, the alum, to continue engaging, but rather it is a mutually beneficial compact between the university, and it must be sustained between the university and the alumnus, and it has to be sustained in a regular manner to keep that relationship alive and vibrant in today, your world today as you've moved into business or education or some other field. So the university's duties in that partnership really focus on a few things, but it's communication with stakeholders, and then to that end, that's the alumni and friends component. What's going on campus? If you don't live in Chicago, you don't necessarily see the amazing buildings that are going up here in the physical plant, or that there is life south of the Midway with all these vibrant changes in the student body. It's the university's responsibility to engage alumni in social and intellectual programming. We do that through the Harper Lecture Series, engaging through university-sponsored programming even in the regions. It's the university's responsibility to support alumni with career and volunteer resources. And that comes through the fantastic staff that we work through at Alumni House and throughout the university to keep that fresh and engaged. And then finally, it's the university's obligation to help the constituency be in the company of each other. And that can take a number of forms, be it social networking or through the magazine, trying to continue to engage people. But the alumni have their obligations too as far as maintaining that relationship. So to that end, we commit energy and resources in a number of different ways, participating in events, volunteers such as yourselves, philanthropists, ambassadors encouraging a high school student to apply to university, advocates, and occasionally as critics. And that's just the Chicago way. But continuing that relationship with the university is critically important. So to that end, we needed to develop metrics. How are we tracking how well we're doing? Underneath that umbrella, we've used a rubric called Go, Give, Help. So go to an event, go to Alumni Weekend, come and participate and engage. Give, and that's essentially a participation level for philanthropy, for development and fundraising to maintain the status of the university. And then help, which obviously you guys do every day in your various capacities as volunteers, with the overall goal of getting to the 50+1% of alumni in fiscal year 16, so 2015, 2016. So drilling down a little bit, when we talk about giving, that can come in a couple different ways. Chicago Society is perhaps maybe the best branded version. I know we have a number of volunteers today. Class councils help us keep the class groups together throughout periods off of your 0 and 5 reunion years. And also the visiting committees who engage quite directly on campus with the deans on priority items for that. And then help with the regional clubs, international clubs, booth clubs, the affinity groups, which are relatively new, and Damon will spend a minute on that. Career chairs, who are so important to delivering those services to our alumni in the regions, and through the Alumni Schools Committee. So 50+1 for fiscal year 16, and the question is, how are we doing? So let me turn it over now to Damon Cates, the Executive Director of the Alumni Association. And Damon, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
I'd be happy to.
My belly does not.
Laura needs to sit.
I need a wider berth.
Wow, good morning, everyone. It's so terrific to see all of you here today. Again, my name is Damon Cates, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alumni Association. I have a longer history with the university. I worked here for about 10 years or so, and then thought I would go somewhere else, which was Stanford University, and then to the University of Pennsylvania for a while. Learned the error of my ways and came back about 9 months or so ago. So I'm delighted to be back on campus and to be back in Hyde Park, and particularly to be involved in such a really exciting initiative, which Laura just sort of teed up a little bit, but is what we're calling the Go, Give, Help, and then how we're also monitoring and measuring our involvement towards those goals. So overall, or comprehensively, as you can see on here, we have a long-term goal by the year 2016 to get to 50% +1. So in essence, this means that we're trying to get at least half of our alumni basis in a sustained way on an annual basis to at least get 50% of them either going, giving, and or helping. So these aren't mutually exclusive categories. We hope you'll do all three, but we're just trying to get folks to at least do one of these throughout the year. So on the aggregate, you can see that the graph or the bar chart is going in the right direction. The bars are getting bigger each year. Last year we had a goal of trying to get just north of 55,000 alumni to do one of these three things, and or excuse me, 53,000, and we got to 55,180. And then next year we have a goal to get just north of 56,000, and we're already well on our way with almost 45,000 people that have helped out. We have 3 or 4 more slides that drill down a little bit more related to this. So this is our Go slide. So one of the reasons why we were able to see such a significant increase this past year is we had record-breaking attendance at Alumni Weekend. So in the past we had about 4,600 people. That was 2 fiscal years ago that attended Alumni Weekend. We had 5,077 people attend Alumni Weekend this past year, and we've set a pretty aggressive goal to try to get north of 5,500 or even closer to 6,000 people attending. In our college fundraising efforts, we had a goal to get to 37% undergraduate alumni participation. We exceeded that goal. We have a goal to get to 40% this fiscal year, which we hope to do. And across the board on both dollars and donors, all of our annual funds were up anywhere from 5 to 7%. So then lastly, if you put them all together, this is when you think about the different buckets, you can see how it's dispersed, how folks are either going, giving, and or helping. So we're trying to get the bar to be all one color because we'd like people to do all three things. But again, we're just trying to measure across the board but more specifically, I would like to thank all of you for being here, for all that you do to help advance the important work of the institution, and on a very much grassroots level, where all the interaction that happens across the board, whether it's a book club in Denver or a Harper lecture in New York or whatever, all things in between, it's just really, really valuable to the connections that we have. I was telling Laura this morning, I was waiting for the elevator in my building, and one of my neighbors who just recently moved in came out of his apartment and was standing next to me at the elevator, so we started talking, and he had a bag in his hand. It was clear he was going somewhere. So I said, "What are you up to this weekend?" He said, "Oh, I'm going out of town. I'm going on this bike ride in Michigan." And he said, "You clearly look like you're going to the office." And I said, "Yes." And of course I had this binder that said UChicago on it. And I said, "I'm going to the University of Chicago because we have an event there, or events there today. It's homecoming and other things." And he said, "Oh, that's great. I'm a PhD student in geophysics at the University of Chicago." And I said, "Well, if you have completed 9 credits, you are technically an alum." And he said, "Well, then that explains why I'm getting this stuff. What's your name?" And I said, "Damon." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I get emails from you all the time." So some things are really working for us. So I think we have a little more education to do on why he's getting the emails, but I was happy to see him. So I'm also reminded, as I told Laura, that I need to be a little more mindful of coming and going in the building too, because I don't necessarily know all the people that are at the University of Chicago that live with me. But anyway, there are many other ways to get involved. Lots of different tracks, very similar to the Go Give Help model that I mentioned earlier. These aren't mutually exclusive. So if you want to do one of them, if you want to do all of them, there are many, many ways that you can get involved. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things on here. One, Laura just asked me to mention this too, but one of the things that we're really trying to do is sustain continued involvement so that as someone's interaction with the institution isn't necessarily as episodic. So some people just want to come to one thing, like I might go to the business forecast lunch in New York because that's the one thing I want to do every year, or I might come to the management conference at the business school, or I might just come to my reunion at the law school, or whatever the case might be. But we're really trying to sustain people's involvement and not just make it episodic. So through the affinity groups that we're hosting, which I can talk a little bit more about, class councils are another example, so someone comes to their reunion, but in the undergraduate population particularly, we're trying to make sure that folks have connection with their class, not just every 5 years, but their sustained connection throughout. And let me take a minute to mention the affinity groups. So I don't know if all of you have heard about them, but it's interesting to be at the law school because this is where I began my University of Chicago career, and I can remember talking about and I apologize to them, my Board of Governors, because they've heard all these stories, but I remember talking about the World Wide Web at that time and email, and we thought we would never be able to solicit gifts or to invite people to events on a regular basis through email or through the web. We just thought that would never happen. And now to think that we do it daily is a completely change of course. But one of the things that became very evident is that we were mailing to people and we were calling them, and then there's this new thing, the web and email, and it didn't ever really substitute anything else we were doing. We were continuing now to mail people and to call them on the phone, and it's just one more thing that we're doing. And as Facebook and Twitter and other things become available, that just adds to the mix by which we are able to contact our alumni. I feel the same way when it comes to how we're looking at involving or engaging our alumni. So you have some traditional ways, which is regional activity. You know, I live in a region, I'd like to know who else from the University of Chicago lives near me. I graduated from a class, and I have some class identity. I graduated from some part of the institution. I'm a law school graduate or business school graduate or graduate of the college or all of those things. But in addition to that, I do something. I'm interested in these sorts of things on a personal level and or these sorts of things as a career. And what we find is that there are a number of people that don't necessarily identify directly with that, or that we would have that information in our database to know that someone is interested in that. So we've started these organically, these affinity groups. So there's one on bio-life sciences as an example. It started in Boston. It now has a national steering committee with 5 or 6 chapters across the country, and we have over 1,000 people that are involved with it, some of whom we knew worked in bio-life sciences and others that we had no idea that were doing that. And so we think that this, similar to what I was mentioning about email and Facebook and Twitter, this is just another way that we know that we'll continue to be offering engagement opportunities for alumni moving forward. So, and they're just continuing to grow. We have about 8 established ones now with 4 or 5 in the works for this year alone, and we just continue to see them burgeoning. So, and then last but not least, I want to call out a couple of people. I'm assuming that, Renee, these are all, have you laid eyes on all these people today, this morning? So we have tracks set up today. This is one of the, and Max and Amy, who are helping us lead the Volunteer Caucus for this year through the Alumni Board of Governors, had this great idea to set up some tracks. We're trying it this year. So we'll be looking forward to your feedback to see if it works. But we have the officer track, and Vincenzo Barbetta, who is here. Nice to see you. Vincenzo has served in a number of volunteer leadership positions, including one of our affinity groups. His reunion, he served as chair for that, and then he was alumni club board member in Chicago until his term limit ran out. So he maxed out his time doing that. So that's an example of someone who's on the officer track for us. Is Phil Caruso here? I haven't seen him yet. But Phil is on the Maroon track, so he's one of our alumni club volunteers. He was involved in the Metcalf internship program, and of course was also involved in his reunion committee. Is Remy Kosa here? Kose? Oh, hi Remy Kose. Nice to see you. Close enough? Yeah. Renee tried to brief me on how to say it correctly, so sorry about that. But he's on our class track, so he's in the Volunteer Caucus Steering Committee, so thanks for all your help with getting things going. He's chairing his 2009 class council, and then he's on Young Alumni Honor Roll too. So thanks for all of your work too. And then in your area, is David Simmons here? I haven't seen him yet either. I know he's supposed to be here, but he's Lab 71, AB 75, and AM 76 from the Social Sciences Division, but he's one of the Chicago board members that he's the secretary of the Alumni Club, and he also serves on his reunion committee. So these are just a couple of real life examples of people that are with us sometime during this weekend that are involved in a number of different ways and are set up on different tracks. So with that, I think we're done with the formal remarks. I want to make sure that we stay on time here, but we do have time for a few questions, particularly for Laura.
So there's microphones set up at either side for those who have questions and would like to ask thoughts or comments. Thank you again, just while folks are coming in. Thank you again for all that you do. 38% engagement is tremendous and exceeded goal year over year, and that's due to your hard work. So an outstanding thank you, and yet more work to do to get to that 40% goal. So thank you.
Are there any questions? Sure.
Go ahead. That's okay. Yeah.
Extract myself. You talked about these goals. What about comparative benchmarks with other similar institutions, if there are such?
Well, so what's interesting.
Repeat the question first.
If we have comparative benchmarks with other institutions. So having worked at Stanford and Penn, which we compare ourselves to on a pretty regular basis, what's interesting is neither of those institutions are tracking, which I like about the University of Chicago, but no one else, those two institutions or even in the Ivy Plus group are tracking the way that we are engagement metrics with their alumni. What I shared with the Alumni Board of Governors yesterday is we randomly received a presentation from the Alumni Association at Tufts University, and the Go Give Help model they completely borrowed from us and have now implemented it. And they're sharing it with their Alumni Association and are using our formulas and everything. So people are definitely catching on to it. But in terms of monitoring it the way that we're doing and putting engagement metrics together and goals together, there's really not a lot.
And I think it really matters too, just to the extent that it is broader than just straight philanthropy, to be able to kind of get a much more holistic picture of what's going on with the university, worldwide community. How are you engaging? How is Chicago relevant in your daily life today? So it's a good question, one thing that we will be tracking closely.
And I would say just quickly too, though, on the metric side, I like the fact that we're measuring it, and I think that's a really important thing that we're doing. But there's two sides to that story. So just because people are coming to things or volunteering or giving, the next step of that process is to also go through and make sure that those are meaningful experiences for everyone. So that if someone comes to something and they have a bad time or it's not worthwhile to them, that's the next part of what we're trying to evaluate. I mean, there's some assumption that we're doing some things right because they're going in the right direction, but I don't know that we're doing a really good job yet of making sure that those are meaningful engagement opportunities for folks. So, yeah.
This is a quick and obnoxious question. A little experience yesterday. I was looking for the place I was supposed to go to, the Riverwalk Cafe, and I hadn't figured it out online, so I called the University General number and got this terrible answering loop you get everywhere. And then I thought I'd try the alumni number, which I gather they actually answer with the human voice, but they I was told, the calls from everybody who can't get through the university. And then I got a phone message because I guess they didn't have a person to take it down to that point. I think that the university does itself a terrible disservice in terms of engaging people, not spending a few shekels on hiring somebody to answer the phone.
That's a very good point. I think we have some online things to do too. There's no reason why we don't have some chat capabilities as well for people to be able to email us too. There was a observation that both from the general university sort of front door to the Alumni Association front door, it's a little
anywhere.
Not as easy to get in touch with the institution as it could be, both by phone or
you'll have control of
so
power, obviously. The little switch on top is on and off. There's like a 2-3 second delay from on.
Yeah.
So, other than that, if you want to talk for a second.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me? Oh, you have your headset on.
Sure. It's a yes to the first part of the question.
Check. How's that?
I think everybody heard it, but
did everyone hear that? We had a consultant.
Welcome. How to work with
University
motivate different
No.
personality
2008
types.
was the joint task. I think
Right
Rob's referring to the
okay.
joint task force report, which was actually the one I was talking about. Yeah, and the consultant was me. Actually, it was David Kasner, who's sitting there in front of you, myself, and another member of the Alumni Board of Governors were the 3 alumni representatives.
Sure.
And then from the trustees side, 2 alums, 1 non-alum, but sit on the Board of Trustees, led by John
Director of Learning
McGinn.
Organizational
And we can get a copy of the joint task force report for you, absolutely, because it really does talk about the areas where we've done really well, and yet there are areas of opportunity to continue to grow that engagement. So happy to share that.
Do you want to take the staff question too, or do you want me to?
I think that's probably you.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to be back at the University of Chicago, and some of the staff decisions that were made included me. So I think that's, in my book, that's positive. But so there's a couple things that have happened. We had some general leadership changes at the vice president's level. So Ron Schiller, he was a former vice president, left. Michelle Shealy served as an interim vice president for a while, and then has since made a decision to go to Stanford University. And then Tom Farrell, who I worked with at the University of Pennsylvania, assumed the vice president's role last July. So he's in his second year here now, or
16 months,
16
essentially.
Months or so. And so with that, just to be transparent, they're at the top when there's some leadership changes. Folks evaluate the organization. Both the vice president does, and then those who work within the organization make choices of whether or not they want to stay, or this is an opportunity for them to leave. And at the same time, the leadership makes choices about how the organization should be structured. And sometimes that includes promotions and new programs being developed, and sometimes the consequence of that is positions that just don't exist anymore. So there were some staffing choices that were made and some decisions that were made and management decisions that were made, hopefully to align us on a couple of fronts. One, as we are the Alumni Relations and Development Office, on the Alumni Relations side, we want to be well positioned to get to the 50+1, plus other things that we're hoping to accomplish. And on the development side, we're in the initial phases of talking about our next capital campaign and want to be well positioned to raise what could be $3.5 or $4 billion in our next capital campaign. So the one thing that we are working on, because I know this affects all of you here, we do have, relationships are very, very important, and the longer people stay here and connect with our alumni, I think the better off we are. And so we're working hard to make sure that staff who join the organization also stay with the organization, as long as it makes sense for both parties for them to be here. So, yes?
Related to that last issue, my reunion year 45 was last year, and we had 3 different alumni reps working with us during the period that we were planning, and that was very.
I have to tell you, it is top priority for me. And I see. So someone was mentioning how many different staff members they'd worked with just in the short time that one might be in their reunion cycle, and it is a huge priority for me, both on the Alumni Relations side and on the class giving side. Judith, who's one of our Alumni Board of Governors members, has worked with 4 staff members. Just to be transparent, she'll tell you this too, but 4 staff members in the past 7 months on her reunion campaign, and it's just unacceptable. So we're very much focused on that. Yes?
So then what accounts for the high turnover in your industry? It seems to me that the people come, they're welcoming, they're nice, and then they're gone.
Right. So
and it's not just this university, it's all universities.
Right, I see it.
Summarize them, just so people.
There was a question about why the higher turnover. I would say it's, I've identified sort of 3 things that I think we need to be focused on. One, I don't know that we're, on the onboarding side or on the recruitment side, we just need to be a little more open about what the position is and describe them a little bit better, and the realities of what this position is, what the positions are. Secondly, I think that we have a competitive issue within just Chicago generally. I mean, I think the switching costs, I've said this before, but the switching costs from, at a certain point in your career, which is typically some of the profile of the folks that we're recruiting for these positions. It's somewhat easy if you're working at our downtown office on Friday, and then you've accepted a position in fundraising at the Museum of Contemporary Art, which is just off Michigan Avenue downtown, and you start that position on Monday. The switching costs aren't that high for someone to be able to switch positions. And the third thing is, I think, just generally as we talk about our reunions, I think we have just some more work to be done on what a celebration of a reunion looks like and who would be interested in working in that kind of a position.
It is high on the priority list, and I think it's something we talked about in our alumni board meeting yesterday, and it is something we know it's a high priority because we as volunteers bond so closely with the staff with whom we work on a regular basis. So, working on it.
Any other questions? Yes. Ali.
Luke, just have a quick question or observation. This has come up a few times when people are looking to get involved. Is there a way to actually maybe have a cheat sheet or a Facebook of here's who you should call at the university with the following types of needs? Just because given the changes, the answers. So maybe just one landing page. If you want to get involved,
that sounds great.
Maybe pictures.
So so
pictures,
the like a little pick book. The question is there a way to get all the staff put together points of contact on one page, on one landing site on the web page? And I think that's a great idea.
Me too.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Do you have any data about the demographics of giving and that volunteers, i.e., that graphic looks very different for baby boomers than it does for Gen X who have been disrupted by internet, 9/11, all these financial crises and all these things. And so what is that segmentation doing, and what are you doing to ensure that all of
We have decks and decks of slides with all, I mean, we have those folks, and then we can cut the data a number of different ways, and we do that. One of the things that we're also working on right now is just an engagement metric by region too, to see, to sort of set a baseline of this is how engaged the general population of the alumni are based on these Go Give Help metrics, and then to look at Denver or to look at Dallas and to find out if those areas are more engaged or not, and then to try to do more programming.
I didn't ask about regions, I asked about age.
Well, and the segmentation the same way for alumni too, and the different demographic.
And I
groups
think
as well.
what,
It's
from
the
my
same process.
personal observation anyway, it seems as though it sort of tracks by life stage a little bit, that I think those who have more time, maybe less family obligations, whatnot, tend, from at least my experience in DC, there's sort of a boomerang effect a little bit as far as on the help side of the equation. But I'd be interested actually in seeing some of the give data. I
can
don't
follow
know.
up with you afterwards and share some of that information. We have it. Are there any other questions? I want to be mindful so that we stay on time too.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you everyone for coming this morning. We are so grateful for all that you do for the university, and a big thanks and applause to you guys. Thank you very much.